The hamburger. It's the undisputed king of sandwiches, an icon of American culture, a symbol of backyard barbecues, and the engine of a global fast food empire worth hundreds of billions of dollars. We think we know it so well. But what if I told you the entire story you know is wrong? What if I told you that the journey of the world's most famous sandwich didn't begin in a classic American diner, but here, under the saddle of a 13th century Mongol warrior? This is a story that spans more than 800 years and crosses 3 continents. It's a tale of fearsome warriors, industrious sailors, desperate immigrants, and ingenious inventors. It reveals how a simple meal, born out of necessity, transformed into a global phenomenon that changed the way we eat, work, and even live. To understand the hamburger, we have to strip it down to its essence. It's not about the cheese, the lettuce, or the secret sauce. It's about one core ingredient: ground meat. And the story of ground meat is far older and stranger than you could ever imagine. So, prepare yourself, because the true origin story of the hamburger is about to begin. Our journey starts in the early 13th century with one of the most formidable military forces in history, the Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan's Golden Horde was constantly on the move, conquering vast territories from Asia to Europe. This nomadic lifestyle demanded food that was portable and easy to prepare. The Mongol cavalry rode small, sturdy horses and spent days, even weeks, in the saddle. They needed a source of protein that wouldn't spoil quickly. Their solution was ingenious. They would take leftover scraps of horse meat, lamb, or mutton, form them into flat patties, and place them under their saddles. While this sounds unappetizing to us, the logic was sound, explained historians like Charles Perry. The constant pressure from the rider's weight and the friction from the horse's movement would both tenderize the tough meat and press out excess moisture, helping to preserve it. At the end of a long day's ride, the warrior had a pre-tenderized patty of meat ready to be eaten raw. Can you imagine that? The earliest ancestor of your juicy burger was a raw, salt-cured piece of meat tenderized by a horse. It was pure function over flavor, a survival food for a conquering army. It wasn't a delicacy, it was fuel. But this simple, practical idea was about to take its first step on a journey westward. As the Mongol Empire expanded, so did its cultural influence. Through the vast trade networks of the Silk Road and beyond, Mongol traditions began to seep into Eastern Europe. The grandson of Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, established his capital in what is now Beijing. But his brother Batu Khan pushed west, conquering modern-day Russia. It was in Moscow that the Mongols' practical meal underwent its first major transformation. The Russians adopted the concept of minced raw meat, but refined it. They swapped tough horse meat for high-quality beef tenderloin. They added onions, raw egg, and capers. They didn't need to tenderize it under a saddle. They had knives and a kitchen. They called it steak tartare, in honor of the Tartars, the name they used for the Mongol warriors. This is a classic example of cultural appropriation in cuisine. A society takes a foreign concept and adapts it to its own palate and resources. The dish transformed from a soldier's ration into an aristocratic delicacy. It shed its nomadic utilitarian roots and became a symbol of refinement. This evolution from necessity to luxury is a theme we'll see again and again in our story. Now, let's fast forward a few centuries to the 18th century. Our story moves to one of the most important port cities in Europe, Hamburg, Germany. As a central hub of the Hanseatic League, Hamburg's harbor was a bustling crossroads of trade and culture. Ships from all over the world, including Russia, docked here. German sailors and merchants doing business in the Baltic ports encountered the Russian delicacy, steak tartare. They brought the idea back home to Hamburg. However, the German working class had a different palate. While the upper classes might enjoy raw meat, the common people preferred their food cooked. And so, the Hamburg chefs did something revolutionary simple, yet historically critical. They took the minced beef patty and cooked it. They would take low-cost cuts of beef, often mixed with onions, breadcrumbs, and spices to stretch the meat and add flavor, form it into a patty, and then fry or broil it. They called it the Hamburg steak. It's crucial to understand what the Hamburg steak was and what it wasn't. It was a main course, served on a plate, often with gravy. It was considered a delicacy for some, but more often it was a cheap, protein-rich, and flavorful meal for working-class Germans, especially those who couldn't afford a whole cut of beef. It was popular among sailors because it was easy to prepare on ships. But critically, there was no bun. The idea of putting it in bread simply didn't exist yet. Did you know that by the mid-19th century, this Hamburg steak had become so popular that restaurants in London and even New York started featuring it on their menus as a German dish? It was a taste of home for German immigrants and an exotic new meal for locals. The stage was now set. The idea, a cooked patty of ground meat, was popular. It had a name, and it was about to board a ship for the most important voyage of its life. Between 1840 and 1900, millions of Germans emigrated to the United States, seeking economic opportunity and escaping political unrest. They were one of the largest immigrant groups in American history, and like all immigrants, they brought their culture with them. And a huge part of that culture was their food. Food is one of the most powerful ways for immigrant communities to maintain a connection to their homeland. German beer gardens, butcher shops selling bratwurst, and bakeries with pretzels began to pop up across the Midwest and Northeast. Food stands and restaurants started serving familiar dishes to cater to this massive new population. And one of the most popular dishes they served was the Hamburg steak. By the 1870s, Hamburg steak was a common sight on restaurant menus across America. Delmonico's, one of New York's most famous and expensive restaurants, listed a Hamburg steak on its 1873 menu for 11 cents, a considerable price at the time. But it was mostly sold at lunch carts and stands outside factories. This was the dawn of the American Industrial Revolution. Cities were swelling with workers who needed a quick, cheap, and hot meal during their short lunch breaks. The Hamburg steak fit the bill perfectly. But there was a problem. Eating a greasy meat patty with gravy off a plate while standing on a busy street wasn't exactly convenient. You needed a fork, a knife, a place to sit. The meal was fast, but the way of eating it was slow. America, a country obsessed with speed, efficiency, and innovation, was about to provide the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. The Hamburg steak was about to become the hamburger. So who was the genius who first put the Hamburg steak between two slices of bread? Is it really as simple as it seems? Well, history here gets a little messy. There isn't one single inventor, but a handful of credible claims, all born out of the same uniquely American environment, the state fair. Late 19th century fairs were the Silicon Valley of their day. They were massive gatherings where people saw the latest technology, entertainment, and, of course, food. Vendors were in fierce competition. The key to success was portability. You had to create food that people could eat while walking around. This pressure cooker of innovation was the perfect environment for the hamburger to be born. Let's meet the contenders. First, there's Charlie Negreen from Seymour, Wisconsin. In 1885, at the age of 15, Hamburger Charlie was selling Hamburg steaks at the local fair. Business was slow because people found them hard to eat while walking. So he had a flash of genius. He squashed the patty flat and stuck it between two slices of bread. He called it a hamburger, and a local legend was born. Seymour, Wisconsin still calls itself home of the hamburger. That same year, 1885, at a fair in Hamburg, New York, brothers Frank and Charles Menches claimed they ran out of pork for their sausage sandwiches. Scrambling, they bought ground beef from a local butcher, mixed it with coffee and brown sugar to add flavor, and served it in a sandwich. A spectator supposedly suggested they name it the Hamburger after the town they were in. And then there's Louis Lassen of Louis' Lunch, a small lunch wagon in New Haven, Connecticut. The story, certified by the Library of Congress, is that in 1900, a hurried customer needed a meal to go. Louis took his ground steak trimmings, broiled them, and slapped them between two slices of toasted white bread. Louis' Lunch is still in business today, serving burgers exactly as they did over 120 years ago. But here's the little-known fact that changes everything. Have you ever wondered what kind of bread they used? We automatically picture a soft, round bun. That's the surprise. Louis Lassen didn't use a bun. He used toast, two simple slices of white bread. The soft, round, purpose-built hamburger bun as we know it likely didn't become commonplace until years later, possibly popularized by the first major hamburger chain. So who really invented it? The truth is, we may never know for sure. It's likely that multiple people had the same brilliant, simple idea around the same time. And in a way, that's the most American part of the story. The hamburger wasn't a single invention by a lone genius. It was a crowd-sourced solution to a modern problem, born simultaneously in different places out of a shared need for speed and convenience. The bun, or the toast, was the final step. It transformed the Hamburg steak from a German meal into an American sandwich. It made it portable. It made it iconic. In the early 20th century, the hamburger had an image problem, a big one. Ground meat was seen as low quality, often made from slaughterhouse scraps. Upton Sinclair's bombshell 1906 novel, The Jungle, exposed the horrifyingly unsanitary conditions of the meatpacking industry, and the public was terrified of ground beef. Then, in 1921, two men from Wichita, Kansas, Billy Ingram and Walter Anderson, decided to change that perception. They opened a restaurant called White Castle. The name itself was a stroke of marketing genius. White symbolized purity and cleanliness, while castle suggested strength and stability. Their entire business model was built on transparency. The small buildings were prefabricated with stainless steel interiors and gleaming white enamel exteriors. The kitchens were in full view of the customers, so they could see their 5-cent burgers being cooked fresh from 100% beef. Anderson even invented a special spatula and a custom bun. Ingram's marketing genius was in changing the public mind. He made the hamburger not just acceptable, but desirable. White Castle standardized the hamburger, but it was two brothers from California who perfected its delivery. In 1948, Richard and Maurice McDonald shut down their successful drive-in restaurant and redesigned their kitchen around one concept: lightning speed. They called it the Speedy Service System. It was an assembly line for food. Their menu was stripped down to the fastest-selling items: hamburgers, cheeseburgers, fries, and shakes. This efficiency allowed them to sell a high-quality, consistent burger for just 15 cents. They became a local sensation. But it took the vision of a milkshake machine salesman named Ray Kroc to see the global potential. Kroc franchised the McDonald's concept, turning it into the most successful food service organization in the world. He didn't just sell burgers, he sold a system that guaranteed the Big Mac you ate in Tokyo would taste exactly the same as the one you ate in Texas. The hamburger was no longer just an American sandwich. It was becoming a global ambassador of American culture. Why does this matter to us today? Because the hamburger's journey didn't stop with McDonald's. As it spread across the globe, it did something amazing. It adapted. In India, where cows are sacred, it became the chicken or veggie Maharaja Mac. In Japan, it was served with teriyaki sauce and rice buns. This is called glocalization. A global product is tailored to fit local tastes and customs. The hamburger became a culinary canvas, a universal format that different cultures could paint their own flavors onto. It shows that the journey that started with steak tartare being adapted by the Germans is still happening today. The hamburger is constantly evolving. So, the next time you hold a hamburger in your hands, take a moment. You're not just holding a sandwich. You're holding the legacy of Mongol warriors who needed food for their conquests. You're holding the ingenuity of German sailors who brought a Russian idea to a German port. You're holding the hopes of European immigrants who carried their culinary traditions to a new world. You're holding the spirit of American inventors who turned a meal on a plate into a portable icon of a nation on the move. From a raw patty under a saddle to a multi-billion-dollar global industry, the hamburger's journey is a mirror of our own history. It's a story of migration, adaptation, and innovation. It proves that sometimes the most extraordinary origin stories can be found in the most ordinary of things. The story of the hamburger is still being written, with every new gourmet creation and plant-based innovation. It makes you wonder what the next chapter will be. What's the most unique or memorable hamburger you've ever eaten? Where in the world was it? Let's start a conversation in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. And if this story gave you a new appreciation for this global icon, consider liking this video and subscribing to Origin Stories for more surprising journeys behind the things we think we know. Thank you for watching.